I want to get to my guests. We are joined with the man himself, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Dr. Wilmer Leon is a radio host, political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, host of Connecting the Dots on YouTube. Dr. Leon, I apologize. There are horrible people upstairs, and I don't know if they're horrible. It's just aggravating me, which is the reason why I'm saying there are horrible people upstairs. I'm doing construction. So if you're banging or anything like that, you have my deepest apologies. Well, how you doing this morning? You doing okay?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm sorry I'm late. I got this new plane from Qatar and I couldn't get it started. I had trouble getting it started this morning, so please forgive me for being late.
Did they gift you that plane, by the way? Or was it a gift?
They did, and I know that it violates our agreement. The emoluments clause that you wrote into our agreement. I apologize, but when Qataris give you a $700 million plane, that's it's 400, it's 300 million more than they gave to Donald Trump. I had to take it.
What can you do but take it, right? I mean, when they put that much cheddar in your pocket.
I was actually going to do the show from the plane. Yeah, but that also violates our agreement because there are security, provisions that you put in our agreement, so I couldn't violate that. But I had to take the plane.
You know what's wild about that? I'm glad you mentioned that. It wasn't 2017, I believe, where according to Donald Trump, right here. This is fantastic. I'm glad you so started with that. This clip is everything right now. This clip.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. And in the wake of that conference, nations came together and spoke to me about confronting Qatar over its behavior. So we had a decision to make. Do we take the easy road or do we finally take a hard but necessary action? We have to stop the funding of terrorism. I decided, along with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, our great generals and military people, the time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding. The nation of Qatar.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, they did end the funding. They sent all the money to him. So, what's your problem? You're just mad because you didn't get a plane.
Okay, yeah, it's jealousy, right? Like they didn't give me a $300 million plane. That is amazing how that changes. And by the way, was supporting Hamas at one point with Israel's approval. Donald Trump calls it out. Now Democrats are taking issue with it, saying, "Oh my God, they're supporting terrorism." That's amazing.
This guy, everything you can say has been said. And I think it's Danny Torres that's calling this a flying grift, which is exactly what this is. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It is a flying grift. It is a flying grift. That's putting it mildly. They are effectively bribing the president with a $300 million plane that apparently they're even going to have to retrofit in order to even make it comparable.
I'm sorry. I had some people upstairs that are doing some construction work and they were driving me crazy. Horrible people driving me crazy. Anyway.
Apparently they were effectively bribing the president with the plane. Yeah. He admits it's a gift.
Yeah.
How is this legal?
It's not. That's the emoluments clause is very, very clear. A president cannot accept a gift without permission from Congress. it's as clear as birthright citizenship. It's as clear as the due process clause. There, I think I've said this on the show before, but when you read the Constitution, the one thing of many that the framers understood, they understood the English language. They understood sentence structure. They understood punctuation. And so the document says what it says. There's no debate on that point.
Well, Congress is clearly
and here's the other thing. It's not only that it is it 400 million? Is that I think that was the number.
Like, I thought it was 300 or 400. I mean, but at a certain point, right? It's like it's
nearly a couple million among friends. Yeah. But they say it's going to cost $1 billion to retrofit the thing so that it could be used as Air Force One, and that it's because they're gonna have to. Here's what I don't get. Why didn't Qatar or Qatar? Why didn't they just order a plane instead of giving him one that's already built? Because it's gonna cost $1 billion. They're gonna have to take the whole plane apart and reassemble it for a lot of reasons. One, to be sure that there aren't any listening devices embedded in the thing.
Right there. That's the big one, right?
Well, plus Air Force One is designed, I forget what you call this thing, some type of electronic nuclear explosion that when it's in flight, if a nuclear detonation occurs near the plane, that will disrupt the electrical systems in the plane, and the plane goes dark and crashes.
EMPs, they harden it against EMP blast.
Exactly. Every wire, every single wire in that plane has to be encased in a particular type of shield to protect it against outside electronic interference, particularly some type of nuclear blast.
Yep.
Why didn't they just order a plane? He gets a letter in the mail. Your plane will be delivered. Qatar has just bought you a plane, and that way they could have purchased the plane for the country instead of giving the plane to him. It's nothing but a scam. That's all it is. It's a scam.
They're bribing the president.
They have bribed the president.
And over this week, I have been super aggravated on Twitter. And I've been saying bad things to people. and what I mean by that is the level of delusion that is hitting some of these people on Twitter because Trump says something. And I'm like, this man lies as easily as he breathes. Why on earth are you taking his word for it and just running with it like it's the word of God?
Right.
For one, the prescription drug thing. So him saying, I'm cutting the prescription drugs by 50 to 80%. And then he does a speech. And it may even be more than 80%. Why are we paying more than other European leaders? And then it's like, okay, so how are you doing that? I've signed an executive order. Okay, what does your executive order have to do with private business and private enterprise? Nothing at all. And so then he says, well, we're going to use the levers of government to go after companies if they don't lower the drugs by 50 to 80%. And we expect countries around the world, like in Europe, to increase their prices to compensate for America passing the executive order to cut it less. And you get people saying, oh my God, look at what Donald Trump is doing. This is great. Have you not looked at the fine details? No. It's one thing if you pass an act of Congress. It's one thing if you have Medicare negotiating drug prices. But the notion that you are going to just, I'm going to just say it and thy will be done is nonsense. It doesn't work that way. Or tell me, does it? Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
Maybe I'm wrong.
no, you're from Richmond, Virginia. You know a scam when you see one.
Yeah. I hung out at the barbershop a lot when those guys come in and say, hey man,
I got a
these
Rolex
pair of
for you.
Nikes.
I got a Psycho watch.
Right.
And the other one,
video.
he signed this multi, I guess, $billion trade deal with Britain that at the bottom says this is not a legally binding document. Okay.
I give you another one. This speech. So, he went to Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
He had this massive deal that he got from Saudis. I think it was just an absurd amount of money.
Mm.
And in this speech, he says this. And somebody says, this clip is spreading like wildfire in Saudi Arabia. And I said, okay, let's hear what he had to say in this particular comment. I was curious. Let's hear what's spreading like wildfire in Saudi Arabia.
Sports technology, not terrorism. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spend trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop cabal back.
The last part, I may actually agree with. I don't think we should be going around the world wagging our finger at people. I don't necessarily know if it's all that productive. And Obama spending billions of dollars trying to undermine Syria and everything else, agreed. By the same token, he's shaking hands with that head chopper at that same location. And for all of this talk about we shouldn't be bombing people, Trump has been murdering civilians in Yemen and bragging about it on Twitter. And the only reason he stopped is because they kicked his ass. Like he wasn't able to get air. That story from the New York Times about the reason Trump pulled out of Yemen was humiliating. They nearly shot an F-35 out the air at the time when Trump was celebrating, going after them and damaging them. They were bombing Ben Gurion Airport. They had to move the ships with fighters falling off the ships, and in some cases, pilots blowing themselves out of the airlock because they couldn't get. Like, it was chaotic. And what he's missing is that he's been supporting a genocide ever since he took over from Joe Biden. So these people were saying, oh my God, this speech is a revolution in foreign policy for America. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, no, of course you're not missing anything. There was so much fiction in that one little statement. Who created the royal family in the first place? They didn't spring up out of the desert as an no. The West created them to be the West's operative agent in the region.
That's right.
And has paid them incredibly handsomely to do so. Some of that, I think, was really a shot at Netanyahu.
You think so? I was
Oh.
wondering that.
Yes. The direct negotiate, was it Waltz that he fired a couple weeks ago?
For
Right.
being an Israeli spy. Yep.
Right. So some of that jibber jabber was, I think, a shot at Netanyahu. Negotiating directly with Hamas and freeing the dual citizen.
Yeah.
I think that was definitely a direct shot.
The POW.
What did I say?
Oh no, that was just
the captive.
Yeah.
Because now you have folks in Israel saying to Netanyahu, wait a minute, Donald Trump just got his guy. How come you can't get ours?
Yep. What, those 500 generals and intelligence people sent that letter to Trump begging them, saying, hey, don't listen to Netanyahu?
Yeah. The Yemen thing, I think, is incredibly interesting because Yemen did not capitulate as Donald Trump has stated. Let's for simple math, let's say that Ansar Allah has been in existence for 2,000 years. They haven't capitulated to anybody for anything in 2,000 years, and they weren't going to start with Donald Trump.
Nope.
I think it's also important to note that those missiles at Ben Gurion Airport, I think, were more of a message than anything else, because they didn't strike any civilian. The airport wasn't damaged, and they did not have any. I don't think anybody was killed. I think Ansar Allah is letting Israel know, we can strike you when we want to strike you. They've just chosen not to do so yet because they've been incredibly disciplined, and because they understand what will be unleashed if they do. And so I think they're still trying to be reasonable in their response. So there are a lot of things here that Donald Trump is either misreading or is intentionally misstating. And I think it's more of the latter than the former.
I think he's just lying.
Well,
I mean,
that's another way to put it.
I mean, for one, I don't think Trump knows anything about the world. There's that.
Right.
Two, I think he's amoral about the truth.
That's
true.
He
says what he has to say. I give you, I mean, God, man, there's so many of these clips that I could play. But before I get to that, what is your take on the Netanyahu thing? Do you think that there is a rift between Trump and Netanyahu? I mean, you're absolutely right. They work with Hamas behind the scenes in order to get that POW out. And apparently some of the reporting is that they're working with Hamas behind the scenes now, sidelining Israel in order to effectively try to get some kind of deal in Gaza. I mean, Witkoff went to the hostage families and said directly, Netanyahu is preventing these hostages from being released. This is not us. This is Netanyahu. They're prolonging the war, and they have no war aim that they can accomplish. And you think to yourself, why didn't Joe Biden do that? Meaning Joe Biden could have gotten him out.
Because Joe Biden is a Zionist.
I'm just saying he had the power to do it. He just didn't do it.
But because he's a Zionist.
Yeah.
You're asking, I could make a number of comparisons. He's a Zionist and an admitted Zionist. Netanyahu sat next to him in the Oval Office and said, "You're an Irish Zionist." So I'm not saying something. I'm not telling tales out of school. I was asked this question yesterday on Press TV.
Yeah.
And the answer was, is there a rift between Israel and the United States? No. There's a rift between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right there.
Donald Trump does not take kindly to people that betray him. He's like Michael Corleone in that regard. My favorite film is The Godfather. Because if this were truly between the United States and Israel, Donald Trump would have stopped the funding. Donald Trump would have come on television and said, Bibi, I'm done with you. And the slaughter of Palestinians ends today. He didn't do that. He would have said the starvation of Palestinians ends today. I have talked to Sisi in Egypt, and I am sending American Marines to the Egyptian border to ensure that the aid gets in to Gaza. The what do you call it? The collective punishment that you have been engaged in, that is in fact a war crime, is over. But he's not going to say that because he still is betting that he will eventually be able to build a resort on the Mediterranean called Trumpville.
Yep.
And what used to be the Gaza Strip. So he's miffed. He's a bit perturbed. But is there a split between? Oh, no, because there are too many Zionist billionaires that are behind the scenes pulling these strings. And I would also suggest that people take a look at, this is a question, this is not an accusation in the form of a question. I would ask people to take a look at, has AIPAC been investing more money into the coffers of Democrats? You might find the answer is yes.
Oh, have they?
No, no, I don't know. I'm saying.
Oh, I see.
That's not a veiled allegation or accusation. That's a sincere question.
Yeah.
Because we know Hakeem Jeffries is on the dole. We know Kamala Harris is on the dole. We know what's the other guy from New York, the brother from New York?
Oh, Schumer.
No. Congressman. You've got Hakeem Jeffries and anyway, I always forget the guy's name. Gregory Meeks.
Oh, okay.
We know Gregory Meeks is on the dole. There are, as Gil Scott Heron would say, there's an endless list that won't be missed when at last America is purged.
So true.
So the question is, has the funding from AIPAC to Democrats increased? I believe if you look at it, it probably has. I don't know that, but that would be my sense. That because they're playing both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm. Well, from my understanding, at least the reporting, because look, I don't know if the stuff is leaked for chum in the water or what.
Mm-hmm.
But they're saying that AIPAC felt like it was being freezed out of the Trump administration, that Israel was being sidelined because Trump felt like they were inhibiting his ability to effectively make a deal.
Mm-hmm.
He felt humiliated by Walsh being a spy for Israel and working behind the scenes in order to work with Netanyahu again to kill his ability to get the American POW out of captivity for all of the time he's been in office. And so he felt some kind of way against Netanyahu. But you're right. It's not like, okay, we're no longer giving Israel billions of dollars. Okay, well, that's not the case. And you get all of this talk about a rift. But just a few days ago, you had him arguing in the ICJ that it's okay to starve 2 million people.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, how do I reconcile that? 3 days ago, he's out there arguing you can starve 2 million people. And now you're telling me that there's a rift between the countries. Like, okay.
And you're in Saudi Arabia talking about bombing people, and not once did he mention the word genocide.
No, he did not.
And see, here's what I think is part of the bigger picture, and that is it's a pivot to China. I think Donald Trump's primary focus is the pivot to China.
Mhm.
And so he's trying to, he does understand that he can't do that. Well, I don't think you can do it effectively at all, but based on their math, they can't do it effectively with these other distractions in the way, with Ukraine in the way, with what's happening in the middle. He does understand it's all hands on deck, even the ships that go, even the planes that go overboard. It's all hands on deck to China. And so he's trying to mop all this stuff up so that he can focus like a laser on starting a conflict with China, which is a huge, is as my older brother would say, felony stupid is what it is. But that's what I think he's trying to do.
No, I agree with you, but I don't think he has the competence to do it.
No.
Because if that was the case, you would have made the deal with Iran as opposed to making maximalist demands. You'd have walked away from the conflict with Russia and blame it on Joe Biden. But that's not what's happening. He's sending that whack job, Kellogg, for that moronic plan that has already been ignored, will get denied again when Kellogg presents it in Istanbul. And he's saying stuff like this, supposedly, by the way, he's supposedly in negotiations with Iran. And yet he's saying stuff like this.
When I left office, the only thing still standing between this region and its unbelievable potential was a small group of rogue actors and violent thugs seeking constantly to drag the Middle East backward and into havoc, mayhem, and indeed into war. Unfortunately, instead of confronting these destructive forces, the last U.S. administration chose to enrich them and empower them and give them billions and billions of dollars. The Biden administration, the worst administration in the history of our country, by the way, spurned our most trusted and longstanding Gulf partners, and I can say partners worldwide, one of our great, great partners, no matter who we look to. And we have great partners in the world, but we have none stronger and nobody like the gentleman that's right before me. He's your greatest representative.
The man who had a guy chopped up with a bone saw that was an American, a guy who was living in America, had him chopped up with a bone saw, but that's our closest ally. Now, the catch becomes, who do you think he's talking about? Now, your first thought might be Israel, but your first thought would be wrong. He's talking about Iran.
Right. Right. So,
and yet, in negotiations with Iran.
So people need to ask themselves, why can China meet with the Saudis, meet with the Iranians, and bring about rapprochement between the two? But one of the reasons is you don't hear President Xi Jinping saying idiocy publicly, and probably not even privately, like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I all of this, heaping all of this praise on Mohammed Bonesaw, as Joe Horn loves to call him. Donald Trump, see, part of Donald Trump's problem is he read his own book and he believes what was in that book. He believes he's the master of the art of the deal. Homeboy's getting played. He's getting played. And he's getting pimped. And I'll leave that. I could take that. You know where I could take that, but I'll leave that there. He's flat out getting pimped.
I give you another one.
And final point to this.
Go for it.
Because everybody understands how you get to this guy. You play to his ego. You play to his ego. They gave him a $400 million plane. To them, that's like me giving you a 1963 Comet that I got from the junkyard. That has no engine. That means nothing to them. And he's walking around I got this plane, man. I got this plane. Dude is a fool.
Yeah.
He's a fool's fool.
Yeah. If you notice, when Russia wanted to deal with Trump, they sent Kirillov, they sent a business guy. Hey, go entice him. And even, the jihadi, the head chopper that's in Syria, he was like, hey, you can build the Trump Towers. Yeah, you can build Trump Towers. You can take out resources. You can do this. You can do that. They know how to get to him. They know how to deal with him. He thinks, well, I'm making a deal with these people, so I'm doing. They are getting influence, which is what they want. The other stuff matters to them less. I mean, Jelani is already a captured hack. I mean,
Right.
like you said, you take that multiple ways, hacking off heads or whatever else. But he's already a tool of the West in this case. I mean, he's making deals with Israel. He's basically giving over the territory to Turkey. He's allowed Syria to be balkanized. I mean, Israel nearly bombed his house the other day in order to make a point to him about going after the Druze community. Do you think he fired a shot in anger back? No, he did not. He did not. And again, Trump is supposedly, ostensibly, and see, this is why I'm skeptical of a lot of the stuff that comes out in the media, because I gave a white black hat version of this the other day, because there's some people who what you see is what you get, meaning they take what they're seeing as, okay, this is the reality of events. Trump in Yemen, for example, where he says, okay, I'm done with Yemen. If you want to attack Israel, God bless, just don't attack the U.S. ships. And Israel was like, whoa, what the hell? You're supposed to be, attacking Yemen for us. Okay, well, not so much. America pulled out when it got inconvenient for America. AIPAC being frozen out, as the media is reporting, going around Israel in order to get the American POW. So people look at that and says, okay, well, is there a breakdown in the relationship between the U.S. and Israel? And is this a situation where the U.S. is about to toss them overboard in the way they tossed Ukraine overboard? Okay, well, for one, they didn't toss Ukraine overboard, at the very least not yet. And two, I'm skeptical of that because in regards to negotiations with Iran, they're taking maximalist demands as opposed to Trump just getting a deal and saying, I got the deal. It's a win, and running with it. That's not what he's doing. He is taking maximalist demands. So even when he's in Saudi Arabia, he's saying stuff like this. And again, I want to stress, supposedly in negotiations with who he's talking about in this comment.
I want to make a deal with Iran. I want to do something if it's possible. But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't imagine there's anybody at this table or anybody in this room that would say they can. I'm strongly urging all nations to join us in full.
Now, this should strongly put us in the mind of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. It should strongly put us in the mind of George Bush pretending to negotiate with Iraq, using Scott Ritter as a tool not to stop a war, but to initiate a war. And it looks like Donald Trump is doing the exact same playbook. Oh, we're going to have these negotiations. The negotiations, he can't make up his mind in regards to what he wants. The neocons, Zionists, whack jobs are pressing him to go further and harder. And so he maximizes demands to something that they would never accept. By the way, they're not trying to get a nuke. Even by our own assessments, they're not trying to get a nuke. And so he's lying through his teeth right there. And from my point of view, it sounds like you're trying to set a context by which to attack Iran. Even the Houthi thing, the Ansar Allah, where he's like, well, everything that Ansar Allah does is effectively a stalking horse for Iran. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. They're not even getting weapons from Iran. How are they getting weapons from Iran when you've had them under like embargoes, you had ships in the Middle East and everything else? So to me, if indeed the reporting is correct, and the reporting is, well, there's a rift between the U.S. and Israel, okay, then why is he effectively about to attack Iran on the premise of a lie for Israel, if that's true?
It makes no sense.
That's my black hat. That's why I said the black hat version of it. That's why I'm more cynical about it.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Does Iran and Ansar Allah have common interests? Yes, they do. Do they understand they have a common enemy? Yes, they do. That doesn't mean that Iran is in control of Ansar Allah. It means that, if you and I see the world in a similar manner, we don't necessarily have to sit down at a table or do a Zoom meeting and figure out what action to take, because we see the world in the same way. So, and again, it's not this is more a rift. This is a personal beef between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. This is not a big rift between the United States and Israel. And when people say that AIPAC is angry or frustrated because they're being shut out, what does that really mean? What does shut out really mean? And I say that to say, if I call the White House switchboard right now and tell them I want to talk to the president, they're going to hang up on me. If I don't now even know who the head of AIPAC is, calls the White House and says he wants to talk to the president, he'll probably be transferred to whoever it is that's responsible for interacting with them. And then he'll be told, well, the president right now is in Qatar and he'll call you by 3:00. That's not shut out. So does AIPAC have the access it had 2 months ago? At the moment, probably not. But that could change tomorrow, because this guy is so transactional that all of that could change tomorrow. And I just want to quickly make a point about, you said that talk about Ukraine. One of the things that has changed the dynamic in Ukraine is Zelensky understanding that Europe has his back. And so as this rift with Donald Trump escalates, and because Donald Trump is trying to put an end to this so he can shift his focus to China, when they ran him out of the White House, did he go back to Ukraine with his tail between his legs? No, he went to London. And Keir Starmer rubbed his little head and said, oh, come here. It's not that bad. Come here. Have some bangers and mash. And so as Zelensky clearly understands that Europe has his back, that's where, because I've been trying to figure out, where all of a sudden did this guy get a backbone from? Where all of a sudden did Zelensky, where's all this bluster and all this bravado coming from? And I was talking to Jack Rasmus, and Rasmus said, Europe has his back now. That relationship dynamic has changed. And when Jack told me that, I said, oh, that makes perfect sense. Because he's getting pimped as well. He's getting pimped. He just shifted stables from Don Juan to, I don't know, whoever the other
Macron, Mirrors,
he's just a hoe in a different stable, in a different brothel.
Hoe in a different brothel. I like that. That's what we'll end on that analogy.
or Cadillac. He's in the backseat of a different Cadillac.
No, but the thing is, Europe can't carry the burden. I mean, over and over, even the sanctions, where they were like, we demand a ceasefire. Okay, well, Moscow doesn't care what you demand. Let's put that in, let's be clear about that, right? But then the fine print comes out that points out that Europe requires the U.S. to even put through the sanctions, which at that point it's like, okay, It's like, so you are effectively demanding something that you in no way can even fulfill on your own. And this is on top of the 25,000 sanctions that they've already passed. Okay. Another package. Oh my God, we're totally terrified of your sanctions.
As our economy continues to grow.
Yes.
As the Russian economy continues to grow.
And as Europe continues to be deindustrialized and send all of their money to the United States in weapons and oil and everything else. Yeah.
Right.
My man, Dr. Wilmer Leon, always appreciate you, man. I always enjoy these conversations. And you were not late, by the way. You were right smack dab on time. I was the one that was late this morning.
Well, that was just my way of being able to introduce to you the fact that I got this $700 million plane. In fact, I'm in it now. People think
it's just set up like an office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Wilmer Leon, radio host, political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, host of Connecting the Dots on YouTube. And you also have a show on
Inside the Issues.
Inside the Issues. Thank you.
So John Jeter is going to join me today from 3 to 4. And then Saturday, I've got Laith Maroof, who's going to join me from 11 to 12 Pacific Eastern time. And I'm still working on the other 2 hours of the show. But it's going to be, as the Moon Man would say, it's going to be a big one.
It's going to be a big one. Laith is awesome, man. He is really good.
Yes, he is.
Yes. You have a good one, man. Be safe.
You too. Thank you.